Have you ever heard the phrase, something so stupid only an intellectual could believe it? Yeah.
Why? It's a cunning plan, actually. Of course it is.
Out of all the battles of the Horus Heresy, I think the Battle of Pluto is woefully under-discussed when you think about the fact that a Primarch died, well, like half a Primarch, sort of. And that's what I seek to do here. I want to talk about all the events surrounding the Battle of Pluto, the purpose for it happening, as well as all the things Alpharius was saying that really get the mind jogging. The things he was saying right before his death. So if you guys like this video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. And yes, I want to make this clear, one of them is in fact dead. You see, when Alpharius, or Omegon, whoever it was, I personally believe it was the second found one, therefore Omegon under Alpharius' name, was being torn apart by Dorn, you could see air starting to rush through the complex, and light beginning to spill out. You see, when Ferrus Manus was decapitated, there was a gust of wind and a flash of light. This was starting to happen as he was dying, and all came to a head when Rogal Dorn rammed his chainsword through the top of his head. That being said, it's only reasonable to ask, what the fuck was he even trying to do with this? Like, what was the plan here? Because it really does seem kind of useless, all things considered. Well, looking into the Battle of Pluto, and more specifically what Alpharius was trying to accomplish with this, well, the Alpha Legion as a whole more likely, it starts to become really interesting. The first thing to discuss, though, is why Pluto? Well, you see, Horus had dispatched the Alpha Legion because they were still loyal to him, ostensibly at the time, to begin gathering information and sowing chaos on the defenses of the solar system for the coming solar war, the conflict that would precede the Siege of Terra. So, the first target would logically be Pluto, because Pluto was very heavily fortified and was going to be the first hurdle that the traders would come across on their way towards Earth. And the moons specifically were like fortresses. And even more still, the moon of Hydra was the key astropathic relay, meaning that without Hydra in the control of loyalists, traders would be able to move in, for a while at least, without the loyalists really realizing what's happening. And listen, a moon named Hydra, it's just too perfect. Thing is, attacking a fortress world surrounded by fortress moons is, generally speaking, kinda hard. So what the Alpha Legion did was approach the solar system with their engines on absolute minimum burn, like bare bones just barely keep operating, while the entire crew, aside from a few servitors, were put into stasis and left to drift slowly in darkness towards the planet just by looking like a piece of random space debris, relying on their operatives, as well as basically just hoping that they didn't get picked up. It's actually pretty ingenious, honestly. And Alpharius himself, the one who I believe was the second found, was in that ship, slowly heading towards the planet. The ship being the battle barge Alpha, you know, a Gloriana-class battleship, along with a few others. The Alpha Legion actually has two Glorianas, Alpha and Beta. The next phase was trigger massive uprisings across Terra and the entire solar system of all their sleeper agents, their hidden operatives, as well as the legionaries that they had put in stasis years before on Terra. Now you might be asking, how did they even get those things into the solar system if the entire place would have been on lockdown ever since the start of the heresy? One thing you have to remember is, the Alpha Legion went into rebellion 10 years ahead of the Battle of Pluto, which set them several years ahead of any sort of defenses and precautions put forward by Rogal Dorn and the Imperial Palace. The reason for this was because they came into contact with an alien organization known as the Cabal, which opposed to the spread of chaos, and shared with the Alpha Legion Primarchs the vision that, if the Emperor was to win, he would eventually lead the galaxy down 10,000 years of suffering until the ultimate victory of chaos. But if Horus was to win, that noble spirit within him would still persist, and he would eventually lead humanity down a suicidal path that would see the species wiped out, but would thereby starve chaos of its main source of power in the warp. Now, despite the fact that they had like damn near zero evidence to really believe this, they still went along with it, because they believed they knew better than anyone what the Emperor's ultimate goal was: victory over chaos. As such, even as they went into rebellion, their main motivation for doing so was, quote, for the Emperor. They say that over and over again. However, at some point along the line, they did ditch the Cabal's plan, and eventually went their separate way. They had several contingency words on what to do with those sleeper agents hiding underneath the Imperial Palace, so when the time came, they could activate them for the maximum benefit and desired outcome. Eventually, they settled on supporting the Emperor. However, the plan was complicated. It's covered on in the end in the Death Volume 1, a lot of big stuff, and it's a plotline I find really interesting, despite the inclusion of a certain perpetual who shall not be named on this channel. You already know who he is if you know me. But I'm not going to really get into that, because I really want to focus on the events of the Battle of Pluto. Because it sounds really straightforward, you know, Vanguard Assault, Intelligence Operation, it's what they do. But as with the Alpha Legion and their loyalist motivations, it is not at all what it seemed to be, because the real purpose of the attack was to get at Rogel Dorn himself. Namely, how the attack was declared. They didn't just launch it out of nowhere, which would have been the smart thing. What they did was use their sleeper marines under the palace, some of them at least, to attack the inner sanctum and destroy all but 2 of the detailed statues of the Primarchs. As you would expect, it was Dorn and Alpharius. Now, this was pretty clearly a challenge, and Dorn took it to mean he's calling me out as an act of arrogance. He's hated me ever since I rebuked him for being wasteful and not doing things my way. Now he wants to prove he's the best. It's just how he is. And Dorn also deduced that the reason he's doing this is to get in our head. He wants us to slide into paranoia, waiting for his move and jumping at every single shadow. But he instructs his men to keep their cool, and does eventually see through all the gears in the system, identifying weak points through certain operatives he can get at, and confronting Alpharius on Pluto. The Alpha Legion had seized control of the Moon of Hydra as well as the others all quite effectively, but the Phalanx would soon show up in orbit, having used gravitational slingshots to get there way faster than anyone would actually expect. But it's not clear whether or not Alpharius knew Dorn was gonna show up, because he keeps his cool when Dorn teleports in with his Huskarls and greets him openly, saying that he and they have, quote, much to discuss. That could be him having predicted all of this, you know, all according to Kekaiku, as the Alpha Legion is wont to do, or it could be just him keeping cool in a situation that wasn't what he predicted to be, as you would expect a Primarch like him to be able to do. And it's after this point where things get really interesting. People tend to hyperfixate on the death of Alpharius or Omegon. I really need to stop saying that. I feel like you guys get the idea at this point. But they miss what's really being said by him right before he dies. The real implications of it. And you know what? That's totally okay, because Rogel Dorn ignored it too and fucking killed him. Because you see, when Alpharius finally confronted Dorn, he's monologued at him while basically fighting him in close quarters melee combat. Usually not the greatest time to get through to somebody. What he said was, "I came here for you, Rogel. This is about victory. True victory. Look at this. Look at what I have done here. This isn't a war you can win your way. But you are blind to what you are fighting. We're both fighting for the future, Rogel. I did this so that you would understand. So that you would see that you cannot win. I'm not here to kill you, brother. I'm not here for Horus. I am here to give you victory. I know the enemy. I know your weakness and theirs. I know the truth. I can give you victory, brother." And then Dorn proceeds to chop Alpharius to bits and cut his head off. And Alpharius's dying words being, "But victory!" He's completely dumbfounded as he dies. He was totally caught off guard here, and it's the first and only time we ever see him panic. And it's because he really thought this was gonna work. You know that joke I made at the very beginning about how there can be things that are so stupid only intellectuals will believe them? It's because when you know you're really smart, and probably the smartest person in the room at any given time, you're gonna not question yourself or doubt yourself. And when things don't work out, you will be absolutely caught off guard. I think anyone else would have realized that Dorn isn't gonna listen to you or really quote-unquote see reason when you start killing his sons and invade the solar system, especially after basically half a decade of war. What Alpharius was trying to do here was psych Dorn out. Basically get him surprised to say, oh man, Alpharius, he's so smart. He ran laps around me. I couldn't even see any of this coming. I should listen to him. I should stop and take pause. However, I think it's pretty clear to anyone with even a passing knowledge of Rogel Dorn, or like a brain, that was never gonna work. No one's just gonna stop and let the Primarch, who is known for being secretive and misdirectional and messing with people's heads, just talk them down. Like, that's one thing that people need to remember. People give Dorn a lot of shit for killing Alpharius and say he shouldn't have, but Alpharius' own reputation worked against him a lot right here. Dorn didn't believe him, and rightly so. Like, the Lion has his secrets, that's true, but Alpharius is on a whole nother level. None of his brothers trust him, and some of his sons are damn near pathological liars. So the idea that Dorn, after half a decade of war, was gonna stop and listen to his enemy, his bitter enemy, start saying, actually, I'm here to bring you victory, in a really roundabout and cryptic way in the middle of a fight to the death, is just stupid. And this is why I think so vehemently, as I've said in my Fate of Omegon video, why this was the second found of the Primarch twins. Because the original one, the one found on Terra, was far more experienced and far more secretive in his dealings, and just generally would not have been dumb enough to try this, because he hated Dorn and distrusted Dorn above all others. It is said in Alpharius Head of the Hydra by Mike Brooks, quote, I don't trust Dorn because he never lies. How can you trust somebody who never lies? He views Dorn as a damn near threat to the security of the Imperium because he says Dorn is so arrogant and plates himself in the same gold our father does. So if our father was ever out of commission, Dorn would probably be the first person to try and take the Imperial throne. Now you can argue whether or not that's actually true about Dorn, but do you think the first found would have really tried to reason with him in this way? No, I don't think so. And now you have to ask, what was Alpharius really trying to accomplish with this? What was his ultimate aim? And for that we really need to dissect what exactly he said to Dorn. And I think the most telling thing is him saying, I know the enemy. I know your weaknesses and theirs. It sounds kind of bad when you say it like that, especially in the middle of battle, where he says, I know the enemy, I know your weakness right after each other, but you can see there's a consistent othering. I know your weakness and theirs. Saying, I'm not with you, but I'm not with them. I know their weakness. Not our weakness, their weakness. And he refers to they as the enemy here, meaning that he and Dorn have the same enemy even if they're not on the same side. Furthermore, you also have to consider him directly saying, I am not here for Horus, I'm here for you. He is here to show Dorn that Dorn cannot win this war his way. It's something he says ad nauseum, alongside saying, I am here to give you victory. He repeats these phrases multiple times in this dialogue. So, it's pretty safe to say that, yeah, he was trying to get through to Dorn and give Dorn victory. The thing is, Dorn wasn't gonna really understand that. Because when you say, I am here for you, it's like, I'm here to get you. And when he says, I'm not here for Horus, it makes it sound like I'm not here on Horus's orders, I'm here to settle a score with you. Because that's something Dorn came to as a conclusion when this all started, when the first attacks began. He believed, Alpharius has a personal vendetta against me because I have rebuked him in the past, and as such, he is here to show me up. He's here to get one over on me because he and his legion are inherently very arrogant. Now we have to consider when Alpharius says, I am here to give you victory. True victory, he does specify true victory, what exactly is he referring to? I believe he is referring to victory over chaos. Not specifically victory in the Civil War, but over chaos. And since I think this is the second found Alpharius, the Omegon, the original Omegon that is, I'm so sorry for confusing y'all like that, this would mean that he is gunning for Horus's quote-unquote win in the Civil War that would ultimately lead to the destruction of humanity and therefore the death of chaos. Or maybe the Alpha Legion had fully broken with the Cabal's plan at this time, as we had seen around the end of Deliverance Lost, and decided to move fully in a loyalist sense while concealing their movements. Because they couldn't just openly say, oh, we're loyalists now, da-da. No one would ever believe them. Nobody would buy that, and the loyalists would never want to treat with them. That's why Alpharius didn't just throw down his spear and surrender like some people have said he should have done. Nobody would have bought it. They would have taken it as a false surrender or believed, okay, you're not the real Alpharius, I'm just gonna kill you. That would never work. And also, Primarchs are pretty arrogant by their nature because they are aspects of their father. Surrendering is really not in their playbook, especially in a situation like this. The Alpha Legion just never would surrender. Because we have to remember, they are arrogant. Arcamus, Rogal Dorn's Huskarl and Praetorian, says your legion's flaw is arrogance. And he was right, because it is that same arrogance that made the Alpha Legion and Alpharius think they could get through to Rogal Dorn in this way, when basically all of us knew nothing like that would ever work. Another interesting thing is the phrasing of Alpharius when he says, "We are both fighting for the future, Rogal." That is deliberately very obtuse, because Rogal could think it means, oh, we're both competing for whose future gets to succeed in this war, when in reality they mean the future of humanity and the galaxy as a whole, regardless of whether the Alpha Legion was with the Cabal or against them at this time. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself a bit here, so I'm gonna sort of wrap things up. That is what I believe the ultimate goal was. Bring Dorn on side for ultimate victory over chaos, be that in support of the Emperor or in support of Horus like the Cabal said. But what would have happened if Dorn had spared Alpharius' life? Well, make sure you subscribe to the channel because that is actually my next planned video that I hope to release as soon as possible. My theory on what would have happened if Dorn had spared Alpharius and listened to him. That's one I think will be interesting. But what do you guys think? Not about the Dorn sparing Alpharius, I mean about what Alpharius was trying to do here with all of this, or if it was ever gonna possibly work. I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments below, especially when it comes to these Alpha Legion videos that I love making, because you guys always have such really interesting theories and thoughts, and have pointed out things that I have completely missed in the past. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and until then, I will see you in the next video.